You're listening to the Mind Manual Podcast, episode 49, The Trap of Getting Stuck in Certainty over Curiosity. If you want a particular result in your life, but you're unable to get it, tune in to start training your brain and expanding your emotional intelligence to unlock the most powerful and underutilized performance tool that we have. It's the most important work you could do because it affects every area of your life. I thought I'd talk about something that has unfolded recently in a workplace situation that could highlight a big source of conflict and difficulty, not only in the workplace, but in all interpersonal relations. Basically, anyone with human brain that you might interact with will be susceptible to this trap. That is the trap being when we get stuck in being certain about something over being curious about it. The reason why we subconsciously gravitate towards certainty is that our primal brain craves it. Its primal function is to keep us alive. So survival is at the top of that hierarchy of the evolutionary priority list. And the most ideal environment it needs to perform this function is to create certainty in knowing what the threats and the dangers are, in being able to predict your safe passage through this world. This is how certainty becomes associated with safety and security. And when you are safe and secure, you are alive. It's a deeply embedded program that we've all come pre-installed with. The downfall, however, is that in the absence of enough information, our brain will go and make it up to fill the void. It also has this remarkable ability to then go and blindly believe whatever it has imagined it to be, which of course is going to err on the side of the worst case scenario, because that way at least it's prepared you for the threat or danger that might exist in that scene. So in terms of its role and function, it's doing a great job because you now have the highest chance of survival, given you're now equipped for the worst that could happen. Makes sense. The problem with this, though, is that because you believe it, you think it's fact. So whenever you think this thought or belief, well, let's face it, it'll more likely be when you spin on it or marinate it. And because you're all caught up in it, it now feels as if you're just narrating the facts. The bit you can't see anymore is that it's not real. It's been imagined by this primal part of the brain. And you've fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. So in this workplace example I'm using, I'm interviewing someone who is being hired for a particular role, which is different to the original profession that they were trained or qualified in, but they're now seeking to make a career change, and in doing so, it would involve leaving the other, along with her registrations, and so is essentially closing that chapter of her life. So what happened is that given this lovely young lady is around the age of my adult children, my motherly instincts kick in. The alert is activated along with the lecture that usually accompanies whenever someone's making a rash decision. So there I'm thinking, geez, this is a big decision to make at such a young age. It's been a big investment. It's too soon to throw it all away, particularly when you haven't even given this other career choice a try yet, and you don't really know if it's something you're going to love. So I say all of that, but with a solution where we could offer her minimal hours needed in this other line of work to keep her registrations and licensing current alongside of the new role that she would be trialling. So she gives it some thought over the weeks while she waits out her notice period in her current job and comes back with an open mind saying, thank you. I think it's a good idea and she'd love to take the offer up. So we let our staff know in the other team where she'll be doing her minimum hours to stay registered. And unbeknownst to me, the other team has been meeting and planning amongst themselves over the course of these weeks and have concluded, all on their own, that one or some of them are being replaced. Straight away, they've jumped to the worst case scenario and are behaving as if that is what's happening now. They were certain of it. There's that word I want to bring your attention to. And this certainty, which had by now stirred everyone up, had left them feeling unfairly and unjustly treated. They didn't know what they had done wrong. How could we treat them like that? This is what had been playing out behind the scenes, unbeknown to me. So I waited for a bit, and then I made some inquiries and asked what all the commotion was about. Why the big change in attitude? The leader of the team explained what had gone on, where they were all at with things, and the comment that was made was, "We're all this close from walking out of here." What they had done was justify the certainty around this conclusion they had come to, which included because they weren't consulted about putting her on for a few hours each week, this was evidence of an us and them mentality, which they equated to a type of enemy-victim dynamic in play, and on it went. The fact was, it was an impromptu maternal call that was made in the heat of the moment during the job interview, which was then later shared with the leader of the other team, admittedly after I had already made the offer, but nonetheless, she knew about it before the offer was finally accepted. And so that's where they took it. This all came about with no attempt made to verify any of these imagined facts. No one was even slightly curious, there's that other C word, to confirm what had truly taken place. They were stuck in certainty, which led them to show up in a certain way, in being reactionary. And so there they were, playing out the worst case scenario, which all ends up being the all familiar self-fulfilling prophecy that we get trapped in. Now, this is not a one-off thing. Being the humans that we are, we're all doing it all of the time. And this applies even in instances when someone might say something and then we go and take offense at it. Consider the fact that experts in interpersonal communication have estimated that non-verbal communication constitutes approximately 70% of what is involved in communication, with only 30% involving the actual words. So we have a messy cocktail of all sorts of communication cues that our brain has to deal with. So not only do we take those words, which could be interpreted in so many different ways, we then go and assign our meaning to them, which is completely subjective and will depend on way too many factors to count. Then they'll be filtered through our beliefs and experiences, our biases and mood, our insecurities and fears, past traumas, and even attachment styles, the culmination of which we'll see being expressed in how we orientate ourselves in relational interactions. So what inevitably happens is we take their message and we turn it into a version of our creation, and we hold the other accountable for it. It's all a bit messed up, isn't it? How often do we become the curious investigator in setting out to explore where the other might be coming from, what they really meant, and what they might be dealing with that perhaps led them to say those words, or see it through their filters or convey it in that way? The reason why I'm suggesting or promoting curiosity over certainty is that the way a person shows up has very little to do with the other person and everything to do what is going on for them. If someone reacts badly to something, it will undoubtedly be coming from a fear-based projection of what is being perceived internally. So when we become curious about the source of fear within and begin to understand more about that, we can start to see the adapted behaviour for what it is, which is usually along the lines of a protective or defensive position to the perceived danger or threat, given this is what our brain will jump to in the first instance. If, however, we could just pause from assigning any meaning and resist the temptation of jumping to any conclusions, however certain they may seem to us, and instead become a curious investigator from a neutral position with a student mind to learn and discover what is really going on, which will involve going straight to the source, asking many questions, including, why is that important to you, over and over again, in order to reveal the value system that is underpinning the situation or circumstance, and peeling the layers back, however deep they may go, until the seed of truth is revealed. Then you'll be in a much better position to truly understand where everything has germinated from. And the whole approach or response, as opposed to reaction, will be softened. From there, you can continue on with your investigation from a position of reporting on the neutral facts and staying in the cognitive realm rather than getting caught up emoting all of these feelings that you've been gripped by and the ensuing messy aftermath of such an emotional encounter, which is what happens when you assume and accuse as opposed to the model of seeking to inquire and investigate as if you were an independent scientist or reporter. Just know when you assume and accuse, you're scripting a narrative that will inevitably end in a full-blown drama production, of which you are the leading role. Your lines are all set, and you will have been rehearsing them many times over as you go around and around in your mind. Compare this to a clinical scientific report, for example. Ever read one? They're deadly boring. There's the facts, the process or method used, a defined control group to compare the treatment protocol over the placebo effect, and a table of results. So it's an evidence-based approach as opposed to a subjective narrative or opinion piece. See the difference? That's how we want to set up a situation or interaction that we have with others when it's perceived as being difficult or problematic. We want to keep all the stories and drama out of the script and stick to a more step-by-step methodology that acts as a framework to test and inquire and investigate from a curious, almost scientific perspective and present our findings in a pretty dull and boring format without turning it into a creative melodrama that is based on imagined assumptions. Save the imaginative scripting for the playwrights and the stage performances. We're after the cold, hard facts, which are all neutral just on their own. It's only when we go and assign meaning to them and wrap a story around them that we are then at the effect of it all. Our job is to unearth the facts and then to understand them in the context from where and how they were originated. So here's the takeaway. When you feel that magnetic pull towards certainty, when your mind starts filling in the gaps and scripting a story, just pause, take a step back and ask yourself, what if I don't have the full picture here? What if there is more to understand here? Remember, certainty feels safe because it's familiar, but it's curiosity that opens the door to growth, to understanding and connection. So as you go about your week, try this experiment. The next time you catch yourself jumping to conclusions or telling a story in your own mind, pause and consciously shift into a curious mindset. Ask one or two open-ended questions to someone involved, or even just to yourself. Instead of thinking, I know what's happening here, try asking, what could be happening here that I don't yet see? Growth doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from being brave enough to ask the right questions. So lean into curiosity. Let it guide you in deeper understanding, richer connections, and new possibilities. So thanks for tuning in. Now, if this episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone who might benefit from stepping out of certainty and into curiosity. And remember, you have the power to rewrite the stories you tell yourself, one sentence or question at a time. Until next, stay curious, keep exploring. See you then.